Hi, I'm Anahita Champion. Today on the SPNN Forum, I'm sitting down with Linda Sloan, Executive Director from the Council for Minnesotans of African Heritage. Stay with us. Well, welcome, Linda. It's so nice to have you here today.
Thank you. I am so excited to be here.
Yeah, me too. So we were having a little conversation just before we started, and there's a lot of amazing work that you're doing, but let's take it back a few steps about your background and how you became to be the executive director of the council.
I have a pretty varied, eclectic background. I started off in corporate, so I've worked for a number of Fortune 500 companies, from IBM to 3M to Target, which was my most recent corporate venture, and then took a different twist and went over to the University of St. Thomas and ran their career services department. Somewhere along the line, I got an MBA, and then this opportunity just presented itself, and I said, wow, how amazing is that to be able to help our people. So I was excited when I saw it.
Well, we have some similarities, background, St. Thomas, higher education. When you started this role, what were you hoping to bring in to the council?
I was hoping to bring in my leadership capabilities and my, as I said, varied background and just my passion for wanting to help the community. I saw this as an opportunity to really get in and really make a difference in a number of spaces. As you know, we're facing so many disparities, and so I just felt that my energy, my passion, my connections, and my just my drive to make things happen, that I could really, really be an asset in the role.
Well, you've been in the role for 3-ish years now, is that right?
Well, it'll be 3 years, October 20th.
Okay, so a little over 2.5.
Yes.
Well,
yes.
let's talk about the council, SEMA for short. What is it, and what are you focusing on currently?
So as you mentioned, we are fondly known as SEMA. We used to be the Council for Black Minnesotans, so there was a name change there. We focus primarily in 5 key areas, and I'm going to try to name them all, but of course when you're on the spot that never works. But so healthcare, education equity, economic development, public safety, and then children and families. We want to make sure that our children and families are safe and they have everything that they need. Over the last couple of years, we spent a lot of time in the public safety space, especially coming off of George Floyd's murder. It was traumatic for the Black community, and so we spent a lot of time trying to work with the POST board, which is the Peace Officer Standards Training Board, and just trying to make sure that there are rules in place so that the officers understand that, hey, there are consequences to your actions, just like all of us. We have to face the music. So working with them and then just partnering with them. I think it's important for people to understand that it is a partnership between public safety officials and the community to keep the community safe, and we want the police officers to be safe as well.
Right.
So spending a lot of time there. We've been spending time in the education space, trying to increase teachers of color, ethnic studies, so doing some things like that.
I love it. I'm applauding to all of that. So summer is planning mode, right? Session ended end of June, and end of May, so it doesn't come back until January, right?
Right.
What are you and your team focusing on in these few months?
So right now, it's all about getting engaged in the community. So we're having different listening sessions. One of the things, too, is that we are a state agency. We're nonpartisan, so we talk to everybody. But we're a state agency, and so that means that we have to go to different spaces because different communities might be facing different issues.
Sure.
So just spending a lot of time talking to community, partnering with various organizations, trying to see what they're doing, what are they trying to push, Also having meetings with state agencies, so Department of Education, Department of Health, because they also have bills that they're trying to push, and then they are also engaged with the community, so they might hear things that we don't.
Sure.
So spending a lot of time doing that, because those things help shape our policy. We don't just say, okay, well, I think. We try to gather data, whether it's through doing a survey, so we just wrapped up a survey, or going out into the community and holding those listening sessions.
Okay. So this is for Minnesotans of African heritage. Let's break that down a little bit, because there was a name change several years ago before your time here,
Right.
and it was for Black Minnesotans. What was the driving factor behind the name change? And talk about the impact of why that might be a helpful thing for people to know.
Okay. So quite often when you hear Black Minnesotans, people think it's just African Americans, especially the African immigrant population. They, some got it, okay, they serve us as well, but then others they were saying, oh, that's just for African Americans, they don't care about us. And so I think that that's one of the positive outcomes that came out of that name change, African heritage. So anybody who is of African descent, we serve. So it's important for the community to know that. And I think that the legislature, I wasn't around back then, but, and the governor, they just wanted to see, okay, how do we continue to make the ethnic councils more efficient? And so they took a look at all three ethnic councils, and they just said, hey, these are some things that we see that maybe need to be revamped. And then here are some things that we applaud you on. So I think it was just kind of just saying, hey, how can we make you better? How can we make government better? Because again, we are a state agency.
Well, because it's always evolving too, and
Yes.
the community, especially with the trauma of 2020, losing George Floyd, and the Black community, African community, really using their voice.
Right.
Finally, people were hearing them, at least a fraction. And so this sounds like it really encompasses more inclusivity of the whole African diaspora. What is it that you want folks to really know, or how can they help? What are you looking for from the community, the African diaspora?
And I'm glad you mentioned the diaspora, because it's African immigrants, but it's also people who are from the Caribbean. So it's wherever you are from,
Right.
if you're of African descent, we are the agency that can help assist you.
Sure.
So one of the things too is that people need to understand we can be that bridge between community and the government. Quite often people feel that maybe the government isn't listening to them, or they just don't know where to go to get resources. They don't know where to go to get some help. And so we're kind of in a unique position where we're government, but we're not necessarily perceived as government because of our mission to ensure that people of African heritage receive all the benefits and participate in everything that the state has to offer. And so I want people to understand that, especially the African immigrant community. Okay, I'm African American, so you may think, oh, and it's been run by African Americans. So people may think, oh, it's just for African Americans, but they need to understand we are here for everybody. And as a matter of fact, the 3 people on my staff, they are all from African immigrant heritage. And so it's important for them to see us and to understand, hey, bring us your problems, bring us what you need. And then I want them to be engaged. I want the community to understand we're here to help.
Right.
But the first thing we want to do is help you to help yourself. And so we do that by providing legislative training, issue groups, and just providing different ways and opportunities for people to get involved. If you care about public safety, connect with us. We're doing some great work in the public safety space. We've been partnering with my predecessor Justin Terrell, who runs the Minnesota Justice Research Center right now, and looking at what are the public safety laws, banning no-knock warrants, different things like that, making sure that money goes to the community to help prevent community violence, and how do we make sure that there's money so police and community can partner together.
Right.
And then working with the churches, that's a big thing, especially for me coming from a church background. There's some amazing work coming from Reverend Babington Johnson out of the Stair Step Foundation regarding all of the black churches and anybody who's an ally. So churches that are allies with the mission of the black community, they're engaged in this too. Just to look at all of these disparities, and I have to mention one of my favorite public safety initiatives because I was involved in it, 21 Days of Peace. This was an initiative where we worked with police and to look at where are the hot spots across the cities where there's violence happening. Because after George Floyd, it was a traumatic time. And people, like you said, lost hope, and so there were some things that were happening. So police and community got together. 21 Days of Peace started by Reverend McAfee out of New Salem Church. Rest of the churches got involved, and just being on the corner, trying to talk youth. And it's not just youth, because there's some older people there too. So I don't want to slam the youth. Don't be calling me up. But just trying to get people to understand that there is a better way.
Sure.
And quite often people might just be misguided. They're tired, they're weary. And so we were out there for 21 days plus. So every day, for example, I was on 36 in Lindale because I took it personally. And that's how I want people, that's what I want people to do. I want them to understand I can make a difference. You can make a difference. You just got to get out there, pick your spot, whether it's education, whether it's healthcare, whatever it is. Get in and do some work. So 21 Days still continues today. So I'm not out there every day, but every couple of weeks there's a core group that's still on 36 in Lindale. There's people in St. Paul who are out mostly every day. And that's how the community can drive change and get involved. And it's been noted that there was a decrease in violence. The police noted that. So I'm excited about that piece as being an example of how community can get engaged and drive change.
It's every little detail. It's every aspect, every person's background, every person's desire and their way that they can, just get involved, whether if it's handing out a flyer or speaking or having a single conversation. You might be in a blazer today looking wonderful and looking still wonderful, but at in a t-shirt out because, this is your personal journey as well. So for those folks that are tired, trauma after trauma, or, working on healing, or potentially the immigrants that are newer to the Minnesota area, or those that were born and raised here, what do you want to share with them if they're just like, I'm tired? Is this even going to make a difference?
Well, one, I want to point to the example that I just mentioned. Two, we're just coming off of a historic budget year where there were a number of things that were passed. But those things were passed because first they were identified, and then they were brought forward, and then the legislators, and since I'm the African heritage, the black legislators were phenomenal. So excited too. I gotta give a shout out to Senator Bobby Joe Champion, who is the president of the Senate. So if you look at that and you think, oh, I'm weary, I'm tired, you just have to remember that things can happen if you get engaged, if you get involved. But if you don't bring the issues forward, if you don't talk to your black legislators, or if you don't have a black legislator, a legislator in general, because they're serving their constituents in their specific areas, so they will be listening to you. That's their job, and they do that pretty well. So it's important to bring the issues forward and to just stay on it. But if you just sit home and you complain, and I get the whole weary thing, because I was traumatized after George Floyd and was laid off and had all kinds of stuff going on. And so I had to work through that process. And so you've just got to muster up some strength and think about, what am I passionate about? What would I love to see changed? And then talk to somebody.
Especially as concerned citizens too, which you mentioned when we were chatting earlier. That's you as well. And there's so much good that can come out of it. Let's talk about some things that we can celebrate. What are some of those milestones that were reached just in the past session.
Okay. So one thing I'm going to mention is the Crown Act. We've been working on it for years.
I love that
I'm glad you
one.
know about it, because some people don't understand what that means.
I have a 7-year-old biracial
Yeah.
daughter, and I am such a huge fan of this. I love it.
It's a human rights issue. Some
Sure.
people think, and for the viewing audience who may not understand exactly what it is,
Yes.
it's a human rights issue to include that people can wear their natural hair, whatever it looks like, whenever they want to. So for example, if I want to wear my hair in its natural form and with a fro, or if I want to have braids or whatever,
Right.
I should be able to do that without having to face any repercussions from my boss or from my colleagues. And it is an issue. I mean, you've heard about kids who've been on sports teams where people have said, you got to cut your hair.
Yeah.
And people just cutting kids' hair without even having conversation
No.
with their parents.
You can't walk the stage of graduation, so we're going to cut your dreads
Right.
off here. I mean,
Right.
it's infuriating to watch,
Right.
let alone to even walk that path.
So that's, to me, that was a big win. Like I said, I came out of IBM years ago, and it was blue suit, white shirt, and you wore your hair straight. I mean, that was just how it was.
Right.
And so to now say, okay, I can really wear my hair however I wanted to. And you don't realize how that impacts things. That even today when I took this job, I was like, okay, I want to get some braids. But then I was like, okay, well, can I have braids? I'm talking to senators
Yes.
and representatives. And so, but those things are things that become entrenched in you.
Right.
And so it's just exciting that happened. And then the Juneteenth law was passed. So yay on
That
that.
is a
The
big deal.
recognition that yes, this did happen, and there were people who did not know that slavery was abolished for years. I mean, so to recognize that and be able to celebrate that. Restore the Vote was another big one, where there were people who were formerly incarcerated who might still be on probation, but they weren't allowed to vote. If you can't vote, you don't really have a voice.
Right.
And having a voice is so important, and that, like I mentioned earlier
Right.
with the community. Use your voice. And so Restore the Vote, so now it's 55,000+.
Amazing.
Yes, formerly incarcerated individuals now can, use their voice to
Right.
vote for what they want to see done. Another one, missing and murdered women and girls. There's going to be an office established. There are tens of thousands of missing and murdered black women. I mean, they're Indian women as well,
Right.
but black women. So that now there's an office that's going to dig into that. It's going to be a place where people can go if they're challenged, and we're going to really start looking at how do we stop those violent crimes. That's one of those spaces where people are suffering in silence. The families are suffering, and the people kind of more in the first tier, peripheral. But other than that, the voices are lost and people don't know. So there's just a ton of things.
Many. And those were
Yeah.
huge. That's from this
Yeah.
past session.
Yes, past session. Teachers of color,
my
ethnic studies, paid family medical leave, frontline workers. I mean, money for entrepreneurship, public safety money for community. I mean, this was a phenomenal session. It was almost like it was steroids, really, because there was like meeting after meeting after meeting and all this legislation, and we were trying to get up, but it was really, keep up with it. It was really an exciting time
Good.
because we knew that some work was going to be done. And that has always been the challenge with legislature, when you have different parties and people want different things.
Right.
But it just so happened that the governor and both of the legislative bodies were on the same page with a lot of these things. And there were people who crossed over into different spaces too. So it wasn't, completely party line, because some of these issues affect everybody. So it was an exciting time, and I'm proud of the state, and I'm proud of the black legislators who are getting it done.
Amazing.
Yes.
And it just takes one person.
takes
to
one
show up,
person.
to maybe listen, to just read an article, to post something on social media, to, you know, just soak it in, if not yell at the top of their lungs to make it known.
Right.
We have a great state that is very forward-thinking, that is very centered on human rights, and we're only going to progress forward with that. What about folks that are excited, they're motivated, they're a little nervous, and they just don't know where to start? What's a great
Okay.
starting point?
Well, if they already know what the issue is, definitely people should try to find out who their legislator is.
Okay.
And go talk to the legislative body, because that's where it starts. Because those are the people who are getting paid also to represent
Right.
the specific community. So go talk to the legislator. And then talk to us, because if you don't know exactly where to go, or if you have an idea, many people don't know that we can actually initiate bills too.
Okay.
So it's not just the bills that organizations are putting forward, or maybe the agencies are putting forward. We can put forward bills as well.
Okay.
It's been a little challenging to do that because we have a small staff. But
Small
if you
but
come to-
mighty.
there you go, mighty SEMA. I have someone on my staff. He always says SEMA power. I love it.
You need a chant. I
There
was
you
a
go.
former
Yeah.
cheerleader, so we need a cheer.
Right, we need a cheer. That's right. So so I would say just contact our office. We can have a chat. If we can't help you, for sure we will know where you should go. And then sometimes people have bills. You know, they might say, "Hey, we want $100 million for blah blah blah," and then we have to say, "Okay, well, let's dissect that." So we're able to do that as well. But
Okay.
yeah, legislators, and then come to us, and we can help you. And then there are also other organizations in the community
Okay.
that are doing things. You know, there are places where there's funding, so there are people who are focusing on programming. So making sure you're in the know on that. One of the things that we're working on too is looking at our website to see if we can be a repository for some of those things.
Okay.
So that people can come. It's like, okay, well, maybe I'll start with the council. If I already know I have a bill, I'm going to just go to my legislator.
Good.
But if I'm trying to find where resources, what's going on in the community, all of that kind of stuff, let me go to the council and see what they're doing
Yeah.
and see if I can find out some information there.
You're the go-to, the advocate, but you also want them to engage with you. So how can they connect? What is the website, and is there a phone number or email, or the best way to connect with the council?
Yeah, so the website is https:// I don't know if I have to say all of this, but //mn.gov, G-O-V, .cmah, and again, that's SEMA, Council for Minnesotans of
Okay.
African Heritage.
Is it is it forward slash?
It's a forward slash.
A forward slash. So mn.gov/SEMA.
There you go.
I love it. And then the other thing I wanted to ask you, in my mind, I'm like trying to take all these notes. Resources. So SEMA can be a resource for the community. What are some resources that people can find on the website and or working with
Yeah.
the team?
Well, one of the things we try to do is keep up with all of the legislation that's going on. We write statements, and we have things that we track. We have issue groups that where we use a system called Plural, which is owned by some Black individuals. So I'm just giving them a little shout out, which
Of
is a
course.
phenomenal tool actually to track legislation that's been put forward, and it'll send you alerts and all that. So we use that as one of our tools to
Oh,
keep
that's great.
yeah, to keep track of that. We do legislative training. So if you're starting at ground zero and you're like, okay, well, what is a bill, or I don't. What's the legislature?
Right.
Then
What
we
are
can
these terms?
There you go.
What are these words?
Exactly. So we can help with that. We can start at the beginning, or we can start, help you to follow a bill and how you can get engaged in the work. Because we definitely want people to be engaged. We want them to be testifying.
Yes.
We want them to be writing statements
Okay.
on behalf of the things that they're passionate about. That's how the things that I mentioned, how they got passed, is because people have said, hey,
testimonies.
There you go,
Written.
testimony, write statements to your legislators. With these bills, they usually go through different committees.
Okay.
And so you may end up writing letters to different people. So finding out, just becoming aware of who is working on what issue.
Sure.
So every senator or every representative might not be working on a specific in a specific area. So some may be education, some may be public safety. So find out, okay, who are the decision makers? Who are the movers and shakers?
Yes.
What are those committees? And then making sure, connect with them. They love to talk to community.
Instagram, Facebook,
All
Twitter,
of
LinkedIn.
that.
might even be like the great spot to go. Find out who your rep is, connect with them, and
Right.
then just take it from
And
there.
take it from there. They have, the legislators, they have town hall meetings. I went to one at Jimmy Lee just recently
Okay.
for Representative Muhammad, and he brought in, I think, about six, seven different organizations, and he had a couple of other legislators there. So go to those things. Listen, what are they saying? Do you like what they're saying? If you
Right.
don't,
Yeah.
say, hey, I want to get on your calendar. I
And
mean,
just
they're open.
ask.
They want to talk to you because, again, they're representing you. So
Sure.
reach out and get that done. But I love it when I go to these hearings and I see community testifying,
Sure.
or I see the community shows up. So for example, that Restore the Vote,
Yes,
the community drove that.
that's a big one.
And they showed up in numbers, and that's important because it also tells the other legislators who might not have that as their highest priority.
Sure.
It tells them, oh, the community cares about this. I guess I better listen.
Sure.
So I love to see
I
community.
love it.
involved.
Big hats off to the community
the
too
community,
for showing
community
up.
is getting it done.
Oh, we have to wrap up today, and I feel like
Oh,
we
no.
just got started. If there's anything else that you want to share, can people connect and maybe hear more from you on your social media platforms, because you're also out there in the city?
Yeah, so we do have Facebook and we have Instagram, and don't ask me with the Instagram. But if you go to Facebook and you search for SEMA, and then we also have monthly meetings.
Okay.
They're public meetings right now. They're primarily being held virtually, but we would love for people to tune in. And then we'll have a couple of in-person meetings. You guys can reach out to me. I'll give you my email address. It's Linda.Sloan, which is spelled S as in Sam, Loan, as in Nancy, the number 1
Okay.
at state.mn.gov.
We'll have that all listed out here.
Okay, perfect. But feel free to reach out to me,
Okay.
and I'll connect you to the appropriate person, whether it's the policy person or whether it's the community engagement person. And we are happy to come out and to any organization meeting and chat about how you can get engaged in our issue groups, testify, write statements, all of that. And if you have great ideas, hey, we don't know
Share,
everything.
share.
Share. It's
Thank
about
you,
community.
Linda. This
You're
was so good.
welcome.
Congratulations to your team and all the work that you're doing. You have been watching the SPNN Forum, sitting with Executive Director Linda Sloan of the Council for Minnesotans of African Heritage. We'll see you next time. Bye now.